Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Liz. This is audible? Okay. So, I have before me a subject for which I can speak for the whole day. So, now I'm going to speak just the summary of it. What I would suggest is basically, or from my experience, whatever I have gained on these business plan. So the main question many of them ask is, why do you need a business plan? And why do you have to? So I get those questions as well. So as you know, if you say, if you fail to plan, then it says that you are basically planning to fail. So though it is a play of words, it's very important that you do capture your entire plan in a document. Vision is something that is primary driver for your project. What is the vision that you have? So that it gives the future direction, expresses a consumer benefit, is realistic, is motivating, and be fully communicated, consistently followed and measured. So now each of them has a different understanding to each person. However, over a period of time, the lenders, the private equity people, and the other stakeholders have come to a common understanding of each of these. So therefore, it is important that these are also discussed to arrive at a similar definition of what is the meaning. So this is something that is put together. What is a vision? So how do we picture success is one of the things, like Radha said, all the entrepreneurs are positive, they dream a project, they dream a success. So don't do anything, let it be. So how do we define a success? Are we known by customers, or are we, let us say, number one or number two in the industry that we choose to be in? What is the kind of reward that we want to give it to the shareholder? Do we want to be known as the best paymasters? Do we want to be known as the person who gives the maximum return to the investors? Do we want to be the best, say, employer in the world? Those kind of parameters is what defines how do you picture your success. Now, what does a VC look for? So, we heard Ed speak about this. It was simple and very powerful messages that he gave. I hope all of you have made the note. And similarly, Hariharan at length about the promoters and their, how promoters matter in selecting a particular project for funding or not funding. So founding team, the vision, leadership, experience, strategic and execution capabilities. Many of the people who are first-time entrepreneurs do face this as a challenge. Matching of opportunity with the fund's mandate. Now here, you see, when we seek funding, the venture capitals, they have their own mandate. Sometimes it is the Provident Fund guys who will put money with them. Sometimes it is the high net worth individuals and so on. So they have a mandate themselves in terms of saying that we need to give the funds back to them in 5 years. They have a threshold limit of, let's say, 18% IRR, or they say that you will put only in a particular vertical like IT or, let's say, auto component or whatever. Then similarly, they have a geographical constraints. They say that we will put money only in, say, Asia, or we will put money only in developed countries or only in emerging markets, and so on. So that defines the limitations of a private equity as to what you can expect from them before you actually go to them. So it is necessary to match your requirement with what the fund can offer you. Timing is very important. It's important because the fund themselves have a time window. So if a fund is floated today, like I said, $150 million. Now if they have a 6-year window, and if you approach them in the year 3 or year 4, they are most likely unlikely to fund you. Even if they do have some money, they would keep it for the second round of the projects which they have already funded, rather than get into a new funding. So the timing is that, which basically gives you how much of time is left for the PE in that particular fund. Risk-return ratio, here what happens, based on the mandate that they have, there would be a predefined return that is expected by the people who have invested in the fund. And that basically will define what is the kind of threshold that they look for. So sometimes it could be high. Suppose, for example, if you are in the real estate business, the expectation would be high. Suppose because real estate worldwide, goes up and down, but then expectations are that, you would make good returns in real estate. Suppose you are in education field, in growing economies, expectations are high. So like that, depending on the maturity of the industry, depending on the geography, depending upon the time horizon, depending upon the vertical in which you are operating, the risk-return ratio plays its role. Market space and window of opportunity. This again is sometimes you have a specific market that gives you a window of opportunity. Like for example, today you are all in renewable energy, which was not there, let's say 5 years back or 10 years back, or it was in a different shape. If you go back a little, in the 90s we had the IT as an opportunity, and IT window today is coming into a maturity. So the window that was there, which could give you 50% return also, is now becoming a mature market. But in renewable energy, let's say that today if we are just starting, there is a possibility that you will get fantastic return if there is a paradigm shift, or it's possible that you may lose everything. So that's what we mean by the market space and the window of opportunity. Competitive advantages and sustaining the same. See, competitive advantage keeps changing, and therefore sustaining the same thing is what matters to your success in the long term. There may be a small opportunity today, but is it something that can be sustained over a period of time with competition coming in? Market realities and degrees of uncertainty. This is important because a promoter always thinks that his project is going to do well, and that it should be so. If you are not optimistic, then you cannot be a promoter. However, the market realities and degrees of uncertainty is what, like, the stringent conditions that funder would put, or the way the banker would look at your projects. Those are the kinds of sieves that puts you apart in terms of market realities and degrees of uncertainty. Growth opportunities and ability to scale. See, the growth opportunities will be there, but do you have the ability to scale? That is something that you have to ask yourself. Like, sometimes, especially in renewable energy, you have smaller projects. Like, you talk of 500 kilowatt, 1 megawatt. Now, with those kind of things, what can you do? It cannot be like a genset which is put in the hotel or at the back of your house. You cannot really have an exit. You do not have scale of operation. How do you scale your project? Like if it is a 50 megawatt, if it is 100 megawatt, yes, you can think of a large investment, exit through an IPO, or a scale of operation which can interest somebody. If it is a small project, the due diligence that is required, the paperwork that goes in, the time that is required is still the same, because they are still accountable whether they are giving 1 million or 10 million. So you have to understand the sweet spot of the lender as well before you pitch it. Now, opportunity. So what are the, like we discussed the market opportunity and window of success, I think what we did. So then key enablers to success. Key enablers to success are, you have to be very conscious of the fact that what drives your particular market. What brings you revenue? Are you capable of selling? Annual growth rate and stretch targets, this is important because I know a promoter who had a CEO who was giving him 25% return. And after some time, the CEO was sacked because the market was growing at 50%. So, then a risk profile. Risk profile is again specific to industry, specific to the market, specific to the technology. And I think Hariharan covered risk beautifully over 3-4 slides. I think each point was something that you should mark your project against those risks and see where exactly you stand. I mean, I'm not going to repeat that, but that was extensively covered. Similarly, the business model and sustainability, pricing and market attractiveness. Profit margin is again important. What happens is that determines your valuation. When you want to exit, or today when you want to do a valuation, suppose all of you say, I need the money. So do you give me 50% share in your company? Do you give 25%? Do you give 70%? So what important is that the profitability and the turnover that you can get, that determines what kind of valuation you will get. Based on that valuation, your dilution of equity is something that, see, as an entrepreneur, you don't have anything other than equity. So if you dilute equity liberally, you do not have equity for a second round or a third round. So if you are going to be very careful, which also means that your business plan and financial model should be very, very accurate. You should be able to walk the talk. It's easy for a private equity to just push your plan aside because there are 10 people competing against the same money that you want them from you. So the person who has got the best plan, who can walk the talk, is what is going to get their money. So a good website. This is something that I have observed, that people fail to update their website. And the first thing that a person would do is to Google your name. The first thing that he would do is to Google your company's name. And if they see that it is not updated, it is not badly maintained, it's like inviting to a guest to a house and leaving it in shambles. Do not do that. It gives you a bad impression for anybody who looks at your website. Value-added activities. These are something that, in the morning also we saw. It main thing may be production of electricity, but you also have fertilizers. Or in his case, he has coconut milk and things like that. So these are the value-added. Each of you did talk about it, but then it is important. ROI with examples. Basically, it is a scenario analysis, saying that regulatory risk is the biggest risk for power. So what happens if, we have seen how projects got folded because the feed-in tariffs have been withdrawn by the governments, even as advanced economies like Germany or Spain, and how the companies went belly up because you don't have the feed-in tariff anymore, or what was promised to them. This is a business plan. How would you look at it? Basically, an environment and analysis to the financial market. Now, I would like you to take a look at it because Mr. Hariharan covered it in detail. I do not want to repeat that, but please do take it in one slide. It captures basically the environment analysis, the execution plan, and the value maximization. Execution is very critical because when you come as a first-time entrepreneur or maybe without adequate background, your ability to execute what you are saying is a challenge and it is judgment. There is no other way to judge this. If you say that I can manage a $100 million company or whether you manage a $10 million company, the way you come across will determine whether you have the executing capacity or not. So similarly, you have the product roadmap, which is when you say that I'm going to grow from 1 million to 100 million, how you are going to, what's your game plan? Like in the case of renewable energy, if you have a 1 megawatt plant, it is 1 megawatt plant. So the maximum revenue that you will get is instead of 10 cents, you will get 12 cents or 13 cents. So how are you going to scale? The only way you can scale is, that means you need more capex. You need more capex, you need more working capital. So how do you scale? So then, if you work on all this, what you maximize is the shareholder's value and the customer's value. If you maximize the customer value, the shareholder value will automatically come in. This is a slide that I have taken from the DuPont analysis. What it is that, how do you maximize the shareholder value? If you maximize the shareholder value, the way you are going to dilute your equity will be minimal. If you dilute your equity the minimal, what happens is that you are able to maximize the way you are able to raise funds for your project. So, what we look at growth, the return, and the risks. They are interlinked through profitability, your efficiency of operation, and the leverage. Efficiency is very critical because where the spreads are less, what sets you apart is the ability to execute in a model which is frugal. If you have a frugal model, you will have an advantage. I think he spoke about doing something at about 3 cents and selling it at about 8 cents, right, Madhukar?
15 cents.
15 cents. So if he has that much of margin to play with, you can imagine how much of risk-bearing ability the project would have. So operating decisions, investment decisions, and financial decisions, each of them. Many of you I have seen, they put planning at the back, and sometimes when they come to a financial expert, it's a bit too late. I ask them, you put 1 million, 5 million into the project, but why do you think twice before you put some $20,000, $25,000 in getting some expert advice on the financial structuring of your project? This is Porter's 5 forces, which I would like you to see. See, all these are to be taken along with what Mr. Hariharan and also what Ed was telling us. Each of these components is a part of the business plan. That, like I said, one can speak about this for a day and not finish with this. So, therefore, please focus on each plan, how it would fit into your particular plan, because these are general management concepts. So, we have the company, and we are saying that the competition will have an impact on that, the customers will have it, and suppliers, and the substitute product. Substitute product is very important because in the morning we spoke of the same thing. I think somebody here spoke about wind energy versus solar, and somebody said, I'm going to club both of these, and someone else said there is space for everything. So are you substituting? Are you complementing? What exactly is that? So then customers, of course. Many of you, I find, that think that financing your customer seems to be a solution. No. If you think that you can finance your sales, that would be a wrong call, because you are taking a credit risk, which as a power producer, you can least afford to take. No one has succeeded in taking a credit risk on your customers if you are not a banker or if you are not a P. They, suppose, SBI, they make $1 billion in profits, but they also write off almost 3 to 4% of their advances. So similarly, if you think that you are going to give 1 megawatt to 10 customers and you write off 1 megawatt, that's almost writing off about $2 million. So how do you manage that? So therefore, please do not look at that aspect, because it's easy. See, if the entire investment is yours, if the O&M is yours, what is the skin in the game for the customer? He will say, I'm ready to pay 10 cents. So if the entire risk is carried by you. So therefore, that's what you have to do. You have to manage the customer's expectation. If you give in to everything that the customer asks for, then he has no risk in the game. This again is Michael Porter's model. You have, I think it is the same thing which is repeated in another diagram. This is McKinsey's 7S model, which has to come together in a business plan. What is it? The structure, the strategy, the systems, skills, staff, and style. So if you look at these 7 S's, you would have a business plan which is viable, which is taken care of all the stakeholders, and in terms of how each one plays against the other. Marketing. Again, in the marketing, you have to look at the place, price, target market. Once you have identified the target market, these are the things that plays on that. The product, the physical evidence, process. Now, if you take your product, when you say electricity, but in your case, electricity is different. Something comes from biomass, something comes from solar, something comes from, let's say, the wind. So each one has a different characteristic when you are looking at it for marketing as a service or as a product. If you look at it as a service, then the problem is that you are impliedly taking a credit risk. So what are the value drivers in a product? We can directly affect the firm's return by doing all this. Now, when I say that the profitability should be good for you to get a better valuation, how do you drive your profitability? In your business plan, if you are able to capture by increasing the operating profits, how? By increasing revenue, decreasing costs, or scaling fixed cost to growth. That means you have a better fixed asset turnover ratio. Increasing the asset turnover is the same thing. Improve working capital management and fixed the working capital management is very important. Morning also Peter was telling about in the case of the solar lamp. Yes, for you. See, the working capital, many people underestimate. Then find that lot of money is stuck in the debtors, or you have an inventory which you cannot liquidate. So those are the kind of problems that you face. Then judicious use of financial leverage. Here again, you see, it's easy to say that I want 70-30 or I want 80-20. Now, if the cash flow of the company or the DSCR, like Hariharan was saying, is not sufficient, and if you are not able to repay the loan or repay the interest, you may manage for 2-3 months. After that, the unit goes sick. And all your efforts goes down. So therefore, temper it with your enthusiasm, with the downside that you don't want to do whatever you have done till today, because you made a wrong calculation in terms of that debt service coverage ratio. What you lose would be much more than the loan that you have taken, because today it is so much so that the credit rating and the whole history of your credit history comes up. And if you go for a settlement or if you don't settle at all, in business, raising another loan for you becomes practically impossible. So then decrease risk, which is what we have been talking. Morning Coy gave a very beautiful picture of how reducing the risk of a project is so critical, and how the mentoring process or whatever, like Hariharan said, taking independent opinions about the technology and everything else, that plays a major role in decreasing risk. And like Radha said, it's a complementary game. If risk comes down, obviously your chances of success are more. Now, this is the last one. How do you do the valuation? Valuation, like I said earlier, determines how much you value. So for that, we have the technology assessment, the management assessment, and the market assessment. So each of them, like I said, I can't get into the smaller points, but then each one is very important. Then that funnels into the financial premium. It is like this. If a private equity guy can invest in the stock exchange and get 10% return or 12% return, if he puts in a greenfield project like yours, and if he expects 20% or 25%, is that wrong? If look at it this way, if you are putting your money in a bank fixed deposit and getting 5%, and if you want to put it in a project like this, and if you say I want 10% or 12%, is that wrong? So it's something that you have to ask yourself and then see what are the financial risk premium. This is called the risk premium. See, any return that you get over and above the government rate, whatever is the treasury rate in your country. Say, for example, if the treasury rates are the rate at which the government of your country borrows, let's say is 5%, and anything above that 5% would be a risk premium, because that 5% you assume that your country would not go bankrupt, and therefore it is risk-free return. If that is the risk-free return, anything above that becomes the financial risk premium. So then you have the motivational assessment, like potential needs, immediate cash requirement, investment opportunities, and these are the ones that determines other sectors are hot, like IT used to be, and like today you have the renewable energy, which has an appealing this one, but it is riddled with so many risks which we have seen. Then structural terms. This determines, like, what should be the exit, what should be the time period for exit, what kind of exit plan that you have, and all that. Then you have a pre-money valuation offer. Pre-money valuation offer is what you get before the money comes in. Then after it comes, it is called post-money. So this is the early stage company valuation model, and most of your early stage, this is what you should look for. And in many cases, there is no comparables, because you are unique in your field. Suppose if I say that, do you have a value for, let's say, one of the projects that he's doing, where telecom operators, and then he's giving the power to them. So now there is no comparable where I can say that, like the Levers or the Britannias or this one, saying that this is how the market plays out for them. No, these are all in their initial stages, so there is no exact comparison. So that is a detrimental factor for valuation. And the only way the valuation can happen is through discounted cash flow model. And when you do the discounted cash flow model, these are the things that, what the assumptions, like I was saying, what are the assumptions based on which that you have made your financial projections. That is what will matter when you are coming to your financial projections and business plans. So, well,